My name is Lil C's. I'm from rap group Junior Mafia. And I was behind Big. He was in the passenger seat. And this car just rolled up on the side of us and just started shooting in the truck, firing in the car. I could just tell that person was suited. I saw a bow tie.
Lil C's had the unfortunate experience of being in the seat behind Biggie's, being when the drive-by had happened which had taken Biggie's life. Lil C's had been looking out the window and got a view of the suspect, describing him as an African-American male wearing a suit and bow tie. Puff Daddy's former bodyguard Gene Dill, who had happened to have been on the scene, had described in a 2022 miniseries Who Killed Biggie and Tupac how Lil C's had first began to describe the suspect being while they were waiting in the hospital.
Everybody's in the corridor, and Lil C says, "A Muslim shot Big." And he kept repeating that. "A Muslim shot Big." I looked and I said, "He had a blue suit, white shirt, and a blue bow tie?" And Paul said, "Yeah." They said, "How you know, Gene?" I said, "He walked to Puff car first."
Lil C's in the 2002 documentary Biggie and Tupac by Nick Broomfield had described seeing undercover agents having them under surveillance during the time of the trip, claiming he had been shown photos just prior to the incident taking place.
These are FBI photos. The amazing thing is that Biggie and Puffy were under surveillance at the time of the murder. Did you see the FBI?
Yeah, I saw them, and after the Biggie death, I had spoke to a couple of police, and I saw a couple of pictures that they had when they was watching us. They were showing me pictures of me, asking me who is that?
The classified files on the Biggie case reveal how it had been NYPD Major Case Squad detectives who had been conducting the surveillance, revealing they literally have the incident taking place on tape. The surveillance had also captured who is believed to be the suspect placed outside the Peterson Automotive Museum, who is seen as approaching Puffy and Gene Dill just prior to the incident taking place. Gene Dill in a 2022 miniseries had described being shown a photo of the surveillance taking place of the encounter. However, the authorities had blurred out the face of the suspect.
There were two police officers from the LAPD came to interview me 2 weeks after Big's murder. This photo of this guy who had a suit on, white shirt, and a bow tie. It was actually the picture of when the guy approached me and Puff. Everything in the picture was picture perfectly clear, except the individual's face.
Former FBI agent Phil Carson in the same series had described also seeing the photo, which he had then found had gone missing from the evidence catalog.
I saw that picture. That photo was part of the murder book. It showed Gene clear as day, showed Puffy's car clear as day, it showed the other person clear as day other than his face. And it was quite obvious that it was done intentionally to blur his face out.
An LAPD document, which had been revealed by Carson in a series, had displayed how in 2002 the LAPD had connected the suspect in the photo to LAPD officers, claiming they had conspired together to murder Biggie. The document had further stated that the LAPD had been illegally adjudicated and being prevented to follow up with charges under the federal consent decree, being due to an agreement the officers had made in cooperating with the authorities.
Wallace murder internal affairs investigation was illegally adjudicated, quote, insufficient evidence to adjudicate, a finding which is not permitted under the federal consent decree. Which basically means the LAPD was not allowed to adjudicate and make a determination on it.
Lil C's had responded to his description of the suspect in a 2022 Vlad TV interview.
That's the glance of what I saw. I saw a bow tie. And it was a lot of Muslims and them type of people there doing security, as far as regular police too. That was the only glance I caught. I could just tell that person was suited.
The description of the suspect made by Lil Cease and Gene Dill of him wearing a suit and bow tie similar to a Nation of Islam uniform had attached a Nation of Islam into the murder of Biggie. Minister Louis Farrakhan, the head of the nation, had held a hip-hop peace treaty a month after the Biggie murder. A former Nation of Islam member called Clayton Hill had alleged in 2011 that behind the scenes during the same time as this peace treaty, high-ranking officials within the nation were alleged to have been helping with the disposing of the murder weapon. In this video, we're going to dissect Lil Cease's interview from the the 2022 miniseries Who Killed Biggie and Tupac, and by doing so go into detail of his description of the suspect.
Elvis, sunshine today, 60s all over the Bay Area. Notorious B.I.G. is in studio. Well, thank you right off the bat.
Tell that fat mother, he's not gonna make it out of LA alive.
Biggie had been scheduled to travel to Los Angeles at the end of February of 1997, being by his label boss Puffy. Lil C's, who had accompanied him on the trip, had described how Puffy had planned an early press tour across California, being for Biggie's upcoming second album, Life After Death.
Puffy wanted to start doing like some early promo for him. And Big loved LA. He loved the whole vibe of California.
Lil C's had described how the tension had been high due to Tupac's demise 6 months earlier.
The tension was still high. You just lost one of the greatest rappers.
Tupac had been killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, with it taking place in September of 1996. Tupac, who had been pictured with Suge Knight and his Compton MOB Pyro associates, had been captured on footage within the MGM Grand Hotel, being seen jumping a Southside Compton Crip gang member called Orlando Anderson. Puffy, who had been the head of Bad Boy, who Biggie was signed to, had been affiliated to the Southside Compton Crips. Orlando Anderson's uncle Dwayne Davis, in a secretly recorded confession published in a 2015 documentary called Murder Rap, had claimed to have been introduced to Puffy in the early 90s, being by a Harlem hustler called Eric Zip Martin. Inmate Dexter Isaac, who claimed to have been hired by Jimmy Henchman in 1994 to rob Tupac at Quad Recording Studio, had claimed in his book From Friends to Enemies that Henchman had been the person to get Zip to hook up Puffy with the Southside Compton Crips. The book had also claimed that Henchman had been in business with Puffy's bodyguard Anthony Wolf Jones. The book claimed Jones had become a minority owner of Bad Boy after he had gotten his associates from the Bronx Valley mob gang to help pay off a lawsuit Biggie had become involved in, which had involved copyright infringements from the original Biggie Smalls. The book stated that the Bronx Valley mob were then alleged to have been extorting Bad Boy, and Wolf had gone into business with Jimmy Henchman regarding the artists of Bad Boy. Isaac alleged a robbery in 1994, ordered by Jimmy Henchman, had been to humble Tupac in an attempt to get him into a protection racket and sign to Bad Boy. As Isaac claimed, Henchman had been offered management commission as well as to be granted a finder's fee from Bad Boy by Wolf if he was able to recruit Tupac and sign him to the label. Tupac's brother Mopreme Shakur, in an interview with the YouTube channel The Art of Dialogue, had confirmed that Tupac was going to sign to Bad Boy, until finding out information about the label, which made him back out.
We were cool with them at one point. Pac was even considering going to Bad Boy. Pac started seeing things. It was Puffy calling the shots.
Tupac had claimed in a 1996 interview with Sway that he had found out Bad Boy had been being extorted by gangsters on the East Coast.
The East Coast drug dealers got them under extortion. I came and fucked up everything.
The Quad Recording Studio robbery had taken place while Biggie and Puffy had been at the studio. Lil C's, who had also have been at the studio, had spoken on the robbery in the 2022 miniseries.
I went downstairs and I got 2 guns pointed at me. I'm like, huh? They told me to get back in the elevator. I got back in the elevator. And I went back upstairs and I told Big that Pac is getting robbed downstairs. And Big thought I was lying. He's like, yo, stop playing. I'm like, nah, Big, I'm serious. Pac is downstairs getting robbed right now.
Dexter Isaac claimed Puffy knew that the robbery was going to take place. Puffy's former bodyguard Gene Dill, in an Art of Dialogue interview, had also claimed that Puffy had known that Tupac was about to be dealt with.
Puff was there to spy on Big. They go see Jimmy Henchman. Puff can't stand Tupac. What do you think the conversation with Jimmy Henchman and Andre Harrell and Puff in that office when they know Tupac is coming up there? They knew he was going to get dealt with.
In this clip of Biggie and Puffy being questioned about the Tupac robbery, people point towards Puffy's demeanor during the questioning.
I got off at the reception area and I saw Andre and Little Sean. So I saw him saying what's up to me. I'm about to get on the elevator and he comes out shot.
The rumors that's spreading on some tip like we set him up. You know what I'm saying? And that's crazy.
Dexter Isaac in his book had claimed that Jimmy Henchman had gotten Eric Zip Martin to hook Puffy up with protection from the Southside Compton Crips in Los Angeles, following what had taken place at the 95 Source Awards. Suge Knight, the head of West Coast label Death Row Records, had been attending the Source Awards in Madison Square Garden in New York, taking place on August 3rd of 95. Suge had been visiting Tupac in prison at the time from a case which Tupac had on the East Coast. Tupac had been been captured by news crews the day after the robbery in a wheelchair, being while he was attending court. Suge Knight knew that in a joint effort with Interscope, who Tupac had been signed to, Tupac would soon be bailed out of prison and making music with Death Row Records. Suge Knight, while in colours representing the Compton mob Pyru he was associated with, had given a shout out to Tupac and went on to diss Puffy at the award show, hinting that Biggie should sign to Death Row.
I was at the Source Awards in '95, and I was pissed. It came from left field, like out of nowhere. None of us knew what was that for, like, you know, where did that come from?
Suge Knight, in an interview with Piers Morgan, claimed he intended to sign Biggie to Death Row, and further claimed to have overseen a phone call between Biggie and Tupac, where they didn't seem as if they were enemies. Suge claimed it seemed like it had been Puffy who had been more of the snake in the grass, and claimed himself Suge had tried to talk Tupac into making a Ford This project with Biggie if he was able to sign him to Death Row.
He was on the phone with Biggie. When they having their conversation, I didn't see enemies. He said, Pac, you my man. He said, that's more like Pup. I wouldn't have did that to you. When I talked to Tupac and I said, look, man, you and Biggie need to do an album together. On Death Row, of course.
A month after the Source Awards, both Suge Knight and Puffy had been attending Jermaine Dupri's birthday party in Atlanta. Atlanta Deputy CJ Howard, who had been providing security for the event, had claimed to have identified Orlando Anderson in a powder blue jacket as being with Puffy at the event.
Deputy Howard positively identified Orlando Anderson and Corey Edwards. They were with Puffy Combs and his entourage, and also involved in the confrontation. These guys were alleged gang members associated with the Southside Crips in California.
Suge Knight's best friend and enforcer, a Campanella Park Pyru gang member called Jake Robles, had been killed at the party after getting into an argument with a New Yorker called Jason Brown, who had been affiliated to Puffy and Anthony Wolf Jones. Lil C's and Gene Deal, in police interviews released in the 2015 documentary Murder Rap, had both identified the Southside Compton Crips as being with Puffy.
Well, I saw one of them on that picture you gave.
Well, let's get that picture back out then.
You saw one of them guys here?
Yeah.
In the picture? Mm-hmm. Right there. Okay, you saw that guy at number 2 there, huh? Mm-hmm. Yep. So you saw that guy when you was on the Josie tour? Same guy?
Same guy. There had to be anywhere from 35 to 50 some Crips that roll with them.
And these are all the guys from Compton? Same group of people?
LA Times reporter Chuck Phillips published articles after Tupac's death which claimed Biggie had paid the Southside Compton Crips $1 million to kill Tupac. Dwayne Davis, the Southside Compton Crip shot caller, had his secretly recorded police audio leaked, where he alleged Puffy had floated the idea of $1 million bounty to the Southside Compton Crips to take out Tupac and Suge Knight.
What made it a specific, like, hey, I'm serious, I want you guys to kill this guy? How's the conversation go? I mean, okay, listen, I'll do it, but I need $500,000, or, you know, I got somebody who will do it, but I need $300,000.
Yeah, we want $1 million.
The tension of the East Coast-West Coast beef had skyrocketed, being due to the recent loss of Tupac, which had been associated to Bad Boy through the Southside Compton Crips. Biggie began a press tour in Los Angeles, being set up by Puffy, by going on several different radio stations across the West Coast, claiming he was trying to squash the beef.
Let them know, like, yo, all this stuff should be dead. I'm here to show love.
I just came over, you know what I'm saying? Trying to, like, basically squash it.
During an appearance on the radio with Sway, Lil C's had accompanied Biggie in a freestyle where fans believed that Biggie had been dissing Tupac.
Player, please, blood flood your dungarees. Slugs missed ya, I ain't mad at ya.
We ain't mad at ya.
You're nobody till somebody kills you.
The radio stations began to get phone-ins which were making death threats towards Biggie. Biggie also carried out interviews with BET while dressed in blue, where he went on to speak about the Tupac incident.
That's why I'm out here, you know what I'm saying? Right. We hit every club, every radio station, because he can't do that. You know what I'm saying? He can't be the one to be like, yo, I want to squash it, because he's gone.
Compton Police in a Vlad TV interview, as well as the Bad Boy book by Ronan Rowe, claimed that Biggie had been witnessed as hanging out in South Park in Compton with the Southside Compton Crips during this time. Surveillance photos of Biggie and Puffy had been captured by detectives on March 7th of '97. The photos had been published in a 2002 documentary, Biggie and Tupac. The photos captured had been of Biggie and Puffy making their entrance to the Soul Train Music Awards. Biggie had presented an award to Tony Braxton, where he had been booed while doing so. Biggie's security was also revealed to have been hindered by Puffy. Puffy had flown out to Los Angeles in the first week of March of 1997. Puffy had gone there to work on his upcoming album called No Way Out. He'd also gone there to feature in Biggie's music video for the single called Hypnotize, with the music video being filmed out there. Gene Deal revealed how Puffy's usual bodyguard Anthony Wolf Jones had refused to go on a trip, as Puffy did not allow him to implement extra security measures. Wolf had told Puffy he would not accompany him on a trip unless he was allowed to bring 2 tour buses full of security, being due to the increased need for security due to the East Coast-West Coast beef. Puffy denied Wolf to bring the 2 tour buses, and therefore Wolf did not accompany Puffy on the trip. Puffy had upward of 5 off-duty LAPD officers doing security. 2 of the 5 Inglewood officers who were working out there for Puffy had been named in the book Labyrinth by Randall Sullivan as being officers Reggie Blaylock and Kenneth Story. The officers had not been sanctioned by the police department to carry out the work, and had been working without permits under private security. Under the means of security, he was also responsible for supplying Biggie and Puffy with vehicles. Suburbans had been arranged which had government chips installed in them, which meant that the trucks were unable to achieve high speeds, as the chips would cut off the truck's fuel supply, forcing them to slow down. Biggie's Suburban had notorious Big stickers plastered all over it, making it more easier to recognize. Kirk Burroughs, the president of Bad Boy, had revealed in an Art of Dialogue interview from 2022 that Biggie's trip had been budgeted from the 23rd of February to the 8th of March of 97. Biggie had been planned to have been in London, as he was supposed to board a flight on the morning of March 8th, which had been cancelled by Puffy. Kirk Burroughs revealed in the Art of Dialogue interview how Bad Boy's distributor Arista had set up an international press junket for Biggie's second album Life After Death. He was supposed to fly to London on the morning of March 8th, being for a 2-day trip, but Puffy called Kirk Burroughs the night before and told him to tell Arista that Biggie wasn't going to make it. The DJ Clark Kent, who had been with Biggie at the time, had claimed on the YouTube channel Math Hoffa that Puffy and D-Rock had set up for Biggie to be at the party, which had caused Puffy to cancel the London trip. Puffy had tied his reasoning for having lowered security into budgeting, with Kirk Burroughs revealing this was tied into the London trip. Kirk Burroughs revealed the LA trip was only budgeted up to March 8th, being as Biggie was set to go to London. As Puffy had cancelled the trip, the budgeting was then left up in the air, as it hadn't been extended. Gene Deal had spoken to Kirk Burroughs during the time due to information which Arista wanted over payments, to which Gene had asked Kirk why there wasn't more security out there with them. Kirk had told him Puffy had claimed they didn't have the budget for it due to the rescheduling.
I told Kirk Burroughs, man, we need more security, bro, because Puff wouldn't pay for security.
He had also told Kirk Burroughs that he had gotten a call from Unique of Mecca Audio telling him to vest up. The lack of security would soon become fatal following an after-party. Quincy Jones hired the Peterson Automotive Museum on the night of March 8th of 1997 in order to throw a party for his companies Vibe magazine and Quest Records. Kadada Jones, being Quincy Jones' daughter, was hosting the party along with Chris Latimer. She had recently been widowed, losing Tupac 6 months earlier. Kadada Jones invited over 1,000 people to the party, including Bad Boy, as well as a majority of the artists from the East Coast.
It was the awards weekend. It's like an after party for the awards. It was a great night. The energy was great.
The 2001 Bad Boy book by Ronan Rowe claimed that on the day Biggie had been accompanied to a basketball tournament by Southside Compton Crips. On March 8th of 97, Bad Boy artist Mace had attended a celebrity basketball game for a fundraiser, which was being held at Cal State University. Biggie had also gone to the game but was refused entry due to overcrowding. Snoop Dogg and Death Row Records had also have been in attendance. Gene Deal had seen Mace along with Stevie J after the basketball game, claiming they were outside the Mondrian Hotel in a drop-top Mercedes. Gene Deal had told Mace it was hostile out there, but Mace had told him while he had been at the basketball tournament, he had been told by people that he had been given a pass, claiming they told him the targets were Biggie and Puffy.
Mace and Stevie J went to a celebrity basketball game. They let Stevie J and Mace know, we want Puff and we want Big.
Mace, however, had been trapped in a Century Club by Pyrus the night before, where Gene Deal had to go and save him. Gene claimed on the day he had gotten a call from an associate of the R&B group Jodeci, telling him people were coming to get them that night. Puffy and Gene had gone to Andre Harrell's house before leaving for the vibe party. Gene claimed to have counted up to 23 people at the house. Gene had banged his hand on a table, telling everyone that he had gotten intel that people were coming to get them that night. Puffy told him he didn't want to hear it and told him he didn't have to come to the party if he didn't want to.
I said, yo, Puff, I got some intel. Some people gonna come try to kill us tonight. He said, Gene, I don't want to hear that shit. You ain't gotta go if you don't want to go.
Biggie with Lil C's had met them outside Andre Harrell's house, where Gene had gone on to tell them people are coming for them. Lil C's had responded by telling Gene he thinks he knows everything.
I said the Big, Lil C's, Tone, and D-Rock. These gonna kill us tonight, bro. Lil C said, go ahead, Gene, with that old cop. You think you know everything.
They then travelled to the Peterson Automotive Museum to attend the party. Southside Compton Crip Dwayne Davis had also attended the party and had approached Biggie and Puffy at their table. Lil C's had confirmed this in a police interview released in Murder Rap.
Did he approach Big?
Yeah.
Did you talk to him?
Mm-hmm.
About what?
He didn't talk to him, but he came and set us up today, though.
Oh, yeah?
Because he walked over there with me when he did it.
Davis claimed in his police interview that Puffy had told him not to get too close, saying that the feds were all over him.
He said the FBI is all over me, man. I don't want you guys catching my heat. Stay away from me.
Who said that?
Sean.
Oh, yeah. Combs said FBI is all over me?
Yes.
The party had been shut down by the fire department after midnight.
The fire department came and shut it down, and everybody was going out at the same time. We grabbed Big, and we started heading towards the door, and we were just waiting for the truck to pull up.
While outside the venue waiting for the LAPD officers to arrive in their Suburbans, Gene Dill identified a person dressed in a uniform similar to the Nation of Islam as approaching Puffy, but after Gene Dill brandished his weapon towards the person, he had walked off into the direction of the suspect's vehicle. After the person in the uniform had walked away, their trucks had pulled up outside of the venue. Gene had attempted to ride on the side of the truck as a security measure, but Puffy had told him he would never work for Bad Boy again if he didn't get down. Gene had been recorded getting in the back of the truck. Puffy had been in the lead car while Biggie had been in the middle, and the head of security with LAPD were at the back. Gene Dill reported seeing a black SS Chevy Impala waiting on the corner of the intersection outside the museum. Gene had told their driver, LAPD officer Kenneth Story, to run the next 3 lights as a security measure. Puffy's car then ran the light. Biggie's car behind had been speaking to girls outside the window before pulling up to the red light. A person in Puffy's car had been looking behind and had shouted that someone was pointing a gun at Biggie. Lil C's, who was in the seat behind Biggie, described in a Vlad TV interview how he had been looking out the window from speaking to the girls before.
I was just sitting there hollering at some females and hollering at some chicks that was on the curb while we were stuck at the light.
The black SS Chevy Impala had been beside Biggie's car and had shot Biggie 4 times. The shooting had been partially caught on tape by partygoers.
They was focusing on Biggie's car when the shots were fired. Camera just went shaky, like, you're nervous.
Gene Dill claimed when the shots had started, their driver, who was the LAPD officer, had accelerated forward away from the scene, to which he had shouted at him to go back.
Kenny guns the car going forward. I'm screaming like, Kenny, turn this around. He said he's shooting at Big, Kenny.
Puffy's car had then stopped in front of Biggie's. Lil C's described this scene in his interview for the 2022 miniseries Who Killed Biggie and Tupac.
After the shot stopped, we all got out the car, and the only one car door didn't open was Big's. It was just kind of laying over the console.
Gene Dill and another person had attempted to chase the Impala, but due to the government chips which were installed in the Suburbans provided to them, a valve in the fuel supply would restrict when reaching high speeds, therefore making the chase impossible. The aftermath had been caught on tape showing people surrounding Biggie's car. Lil C's had described the drive to the hospital.
We tried our best to get to the hospital as fast as we could, running lights. We were just really trying to get him there.
Gene Dill disputed his claims, as Gene claimed the driver, who was the LAPD officer Kenneth Story, had still have been stopping at lights while driving to the hospital. The driver can be heard being argued with in a 911 call made from the car.
We're man shot in our car right now. We're in the car right now. We're going to the hospital right now. I don't know. I'm not from here. I'm from New York. Yo, you got to go back. You got to turn around, Kenny. You're going the wrong way. Hey, what the f*** is wrong with y'all, man? Kenny, what you doing?
Arriving at the hospital, Gene Dill helped multiple people pull Biggie out of the car. Gene and Lil C's in their Vlad TV interviews had both described seeing that Biggie's pants had been saturated, indicating he was dead on arrival. Gene Dill had described Puffy frantically running out of the emergency room and grabbing his arm, shouting, "We gotta pray." Gene Dill had then replied with, "Pray for what? He's dead." In the waiting room, they passed around a phone to one another until D-Rock had been the person to phone Biggie's mother and tell her the bad news. Gene described how Lil C's, while at the hospital, had kept on repeating that a Muslim had shot Big. The authorities had gone to the hospital to get information about the shooting. A suspect sketch was created based on Lil C's description, being from what he had seen while looking out the window. He described a person in a uniform similar to the Nation of Islam as being the shooter. Gene Dill, in the 2002 documentary Biggie and Tupac, had picked out Amir Muhammad in a photo lineup, identifying him as the person who had approached Puffy beforehand. 4 different jailhouse informants had named Amir Muhammad to the authorities as alleged to have been the triggerman. Amir Muhammad was originally known as Harry Billups before converting to Islam. Amir Muhammad had been a Southern California mortgage broker who is now 65 years old and working as a real estate agent in Georgia. Amir Muhammad's criminal history dates back to 1980, with his first 3 offenses being recorded that year, which were for theft of services for skipping out on restaurant bills. His police record throughout the 1990s revealed that Amir had been constantly changing location and had at least 4 different aliases. He was found to have been frequently using fake IDs. He had been arrested in Anaheim in 1993, being for infliction of corporal injury to his cohabitant after being involved in an altercation with his then partner Angelique Mitchell. The charges had been dismissed based on the grounds of furtherance of justice. Amir Muhammad had then been arrested again in the following year for the same crime, to which he pled guilty to trespassing and received 2 months in jail and 2 years probation. Amir Muhammad was arrested once again in October of '98 after brandishing a firearm at Angelique Mitchell and a new partner. She reported him as driving a black BMW, which at the time was under investigation for lease fraud. After providing the police with a fake ID under the name of Harry Muhammad, he was given a citation and let go. In less than a week, Angelique Mitchell and her new partner had been found dead with gunshot wounds to the head, and the San Bernardino County Coroner's Office had ruled it as self-inflicted. Inmate Kenneth Bogney, who was sought after for testimony in the Biggie Small civil trial, claimed to have had knowledge that Amir Muhammad was alleged to have acted as a hitman for the Nation of Islam. From Lil Caesar's description of the shooter wearing a uniform similar to the Nation of Islam's, then combined with Gene Dill's person of interest wearing the same uniform, rumors had spread that the Nation of Islam had been involved in the hit on Biggie. The Nation, which is headed by Minister Louis Farrakhan, had been connected to the previous assassination of Malcolm X, as 3 members of the Nation had been charged with his murder. 2 of the men had been exonerated in 2023. Gene Dill described how Puffy had a confrontation with a member of the Nation while at the 1996 Soul Train Awards. It had been taking place in a Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, and the Fruits of Islam Security Service was providing security. Death Row and Bad Boy were both at the event and had gotten into a confrontation at the entrance of the venue. Gene Dill described being backstage with Puffy at the time, and they had heard about the confrontation over a radio. While making their way from the backstage area to the rest of the Bad Boy team, Gene described how Puffy had been confronted by one of the members of the Nation who had been adamant about telling Puffy something, not allowing him to leave. Gene described it had caused a scene, and Farrakhan's son Mustafa, who was close friends with Puffy, then had to step in and remove the member from Puffy.
We get surrounded by a group of FOI members. He was telling Puff about some money, and some type of situation. Mustafa said, "Brother," and got up in his face like this. Then you see FOI members coming from everywhere.
Following the hit on Biggie, many different members of the Nation have been named as potential suspects. One of these included Shaheed Muhammad, who had been the chief of security for Farrakhan. Gene Dill claimed, however, Shaheed Muhammad didn't kill Biggie and reinstated to his belief it had been Amir Muhammad. An inmate and member of the Nation called Clayton Hill had come forward with information about the alleged murder weapon and where it had ended up following the shooting. Clayton Hill claimed in 2011 that he had been a part of the Biggie case as a result of him being a member of the Nation. Hill had alleged that he was responsible for assisting Amir Muhammad with disposing of the murder weapon, which had been a 9mm blue steel pistol. Clayton Hill claimed in mid-May of 1997 he had been instructed by Minister Tony Muhammad, the Western Regional Minister of the Nation, to pick up an individual from the Greyhound bus station in Atlanta who had been coming from Los Angeles. Clayton Hill claimed to have picked up a person using the name of Dawood Muhammad, who he would go on to identify as Amir Muhammad. According to Clayton Hill, Amir Muhammad had stayed in a safe house for 6 weeks to lay low following the incident, where he was then alleged to have traveled to Atlanta by bus and had been picked up by Clayton Hill. Clayton Hill alleged Amir Muhammad had retrieved the weapon from a garbage bag and had told him he was on the run and was associated to the Pyrus in Los Angeles. Clayton Hill claimed to have passed it on to Amir Muhammad, the personal driver of Farrakhan, who had then taken it to a high-ranking member of the nation at their Chicago headquarters. During this time, Farrakhan had set up a peace treaty in Chicago where a truce had been set up to squash the East Coast-West Coast beef. In the Nation of Islam theory, some people see this as playing a role in a cover-up, as the peace treaty was being held in the same alleged location where the murder weapon was being disposed of. FBI informant Mario Hammonds had been deposed in San Quentin prison by lawyer Rob Frank in claiming to have had information about the Biggie case. Hammonds in his deposition had identified Amir Muhammad as being with LAPD officer David Mack along with Suge Knight around Death Row Records.
You know who Suge Knight is, right?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know who Suge Knight is?
Through our association with him.
And how did you meet Mr. Muhammad?
In LA, in Las Vegas.
And was Mr. Muhammad with David Mack at that time?
Yes.
And is that how you know who Mr. Muhammad is?
That's the only way I know. That is the only way I know.
Former FBI agent Phil Carson claimed that Biggie was alleged to have been executed by Amir Muhammad, a Nation of Islam hitman, who had been provided assistance by the LAPD. Amir Muhammad had gone to college with LAPD officer David Mack. Amir Muhammad was also the godfather of David Mack's children. David Mack had been an officer of the Rampart Division. The classified FBI files on the Biggie case, which mention a Rampart connection, claim officers who were alleged to have been involved in the case and also connected to Amir Muhammad had been reported as being Muslim converts as well as blood gang members. After David Mack was arrested in December of 1997 for a bank robbery, Amir Muhammad had been the first person to appear on the visiting list. LAPD detective Russell Paul had believed that Amir Muhammad, for his work as a mortgage broker, may have been assisting the cops with laundering money. Russell Paul referenced the case of Willie Hawkins, whose real estate loan business had made him one of the wealthiest men to ever emerge out of South Central LA. The case revealed the broker had been laundering money for the Pyrus. Paul recalled the investigations into Rampart cops Rafael Perez and Kevin Gaines revealed both of them had boasted about a large portfolio of real estate they had accumulated. Paul theorized that Amir Muhammad may have been involved in a similar case of assisting the cops with laundering money through real estate. An inmate called Mark Hyland, who we had covered in a past video, had revealed to the FBI more information about the cops' real estate connections and how it was alleged to have tied into the murder weapon of Biggie. An investigation discovered that Mark Hyland, who acted as a bookkeeper for the cops, had been found as assisting the cops with laundering money through real estate. Hyland told the FBI that the cops would falsely imprison members of Hispanic gangs, to which they would then put property in the name of the gang member, where they would then default mortgage payments for the property for it to be repossessed, where they would go on to buy it at half price at an auction. Russell Paul's information would indicate that Amir Muhammad may have been assisting Hyland in this scheme with the cops. Hyland would go on to tell the FBI that he had met up with Rafael Perez in a parking lot of a Denny's in Bellflower, Los Angeles, where Perez was alleged to have given him an envelope of money. Hyland stated his job was to travel to Arizona and give the money to a cop who had gone on to provide the murder weapon used in the Biggie case.
I transported monies interstate between Los Angeles and Phoenix to arrange the hit on Biggie Small.
This weapon was then alleged to have been transported back to the Rampart Cops, where it was then alleged to have been given to Amir Muhammad, which then, when based on Clayton Hill's claims, had ended up at the Nation of Islam Chicago headquarters following the hit. Investigators had matched flight tickets and hotel receipts with Mark Hyland's claims, which revealed he had traveled to Arizona during the time he had stated. The 2001 PBS series Frontline reports how David Mack, after going to jail for a bank robbery in 1997, had been reported as telling other inmates at the Montebello City Jail that he had been a member of the Compton mob Pyrus.
David Mack, renouncing the LAPD and coming out as a blood gang member.
He's in custody, Los Angeles County Jail, and we're getting reports back that he is attiring himself with red socks, red items that distinguish association with the Blood Gang. And we'd also received word from some jailers that he had said he is a Blood.
In an interview with Detective Greg Grant, David Mack acknowledged himself as a Muslim and revealed to have lived in the same Compton neighborhood as Suge Knight. Jailhouse informants had put information forward which connected the bank robbery into the Biggie hit and Amir Muhammad. LAPD Rampart cop Rafael Perez had been arrested in 1998 after being caught stealing out the evidence locker. He had been the former police partner of David Mack, and when he had first been arrested, he had asked, was it about the bank robbery? Perez would go on to expose the LAPD Rampart corruption scandal for a reduced sentence. The scandal implicated over 70 officers in misconduct, claiming superiors encouraged it as their goal was to arrest gang members by any means necessary. Rafael Perez had been housed in prison with a man called Kenneth Bogney. Bogney would later be called to testify in a civil trial by Biggie's estate against the LAPD. Kenneth had made claims about what Rafael Perez was alleged to have told him while they were locked up, which connected the LAPD and Amir Muhammad into the death of Biggie. He had claimed Perez had told him that David Mack had carried out the bank robbery in order to pay Amir Muhammad. He would state that Perez was alleged to have told him how 5 LAPD Rampart officers had been given an upfront payment of $250,000 in order to start the orchestration of the hit. Kenneth told documentary filmmaker Nick Broomfield in the 2021 documentary Last Man Standing that these officers were alleged to have been David Mack, Rafael Perez, Nino Durden, Kevin Gaines and Sammy Martin. All 5 officers were members of the Rampart Division and had been the godparents of each other's kids. Kenneth alleged Perez had told him that there was $1 million bounty out on both Biggie and Puffy. He claimed the $250,000 up front had acted as a deposit, and $750,000 had been promised following the hit, being only if both Biggie and Puffy had been killed. Bogney alleged Perez had told him how the hit had been botched, as there was originally more than one hit person meant to take out both people, but only Biggie had been taken out. Perez was alleged to have told Kenneth Bogney that David Mack had outsourced Amir Muhammad to act as a hitman, claiming Perez said he knew him from the past and about his alleged ties as a contract killer for the Nation of Islam. Kenneth claimed Perez had told him as the additional $750,000 had not been paid out, David Mack had carried out the bank robbery after the Biggie hit in order to pay Amir Muhammad. Mack had used his 19-year-old girlfriend who worked at the bank to order a maximum capacity standing cash, which equated to $722,000. He had gone to the bank with 2 other unidentified people dressed in suits and disguises, where through using his girlfriend's assistance he had gotten access into the vault. Mack was documented as traveling to Las Vegas the following day with Rafael Perez. Bogney claimed Perez had told him that they were alleged to have paid Amir Muhammad in Las Vegas.
So that's why Mac did the bank job in order to pay Amir, because he was going to go after them. Because Suge didn't hire Amir. Perez and Mac got him.
The $722,000 still remains unaccounted for. David Mack's employment records revealed he had taken 2 days off from working at the LAPD as vacation days, with one being on the day of the Biggie incident and the other being the day of the bank robbery. Kevin Gaines had been killed by a fellow cop 9 days after the Biggie murder. LAPD detective Russell Paul, who had been investigating the Gaines case, had found he had a green Montero truck registered under the name of Sharifa Knight, who had been Suge Knight's ex-wife. It was also found Gaines had been living with Sharifa prior to his death. Suge Knight had divorced Sharifa Knight in 1996 and was in prison during the time of the Biggie incident, being due to the surveillance footage which implicated him in the Orlando Anderson incident. Sharifa Knight had been given nightlife management by Suge Knight in 1992, which had been a management company for death row artists such as Snoop Dogg. Russell Paul began looking into possible Rampart ties into the Biggie case after discovering a connection into death row. LAPD officer Kevin Lowe had told Detective Greg Grant that Kevin Gaines had attempted to recruit him to work security for the girlfriend of Suge Knight. Sharifa Knight and Kevin Gaines had begun an affair in 1994. Suge Knight was said to have put hands on Kevin Gaines in the back of a car in 1996 after he had found out about the affair, to which he had then come to learn that he was a cop after Sharifa had told him. Former Rampart captain Rich Mears claimed in the podcast Game of Crimes that Gaines was found to have had 7 different credit cards registered to death row records. He also confirmed that Kevin Gaines was found to have been recruiting officers from various different departments in order to provide off-duty security for death row.
Kevin Gaines, on the other hand, was very intimately involved with Death Row Records. He was involved in actually hiring off-duty cops to work for Death Row Records, not only from LAPD, but Inglewood PD, Compton PD, Sheriff's Department. When they did the investigation, he had 7 major credit cards from Death Row Records in his wallet.
After a TV series claimed to have discovered a check from Death Row Records to Kevin Gaines in his gym bag, Death Row Records' former head of security Reggie Wright Jr. in recorded audio with Sharifa Knight had asked her if she had ever written any checks from Death Row Records to Kevin Gaines. She claimed not to and further stated he would hire his fellow cops to provide security for Snoop Dogg, who would pay them in cash. Kevin Gaines was found to have had receipts of almost $1,000 from Monty's Steakhouse, which was a restaurant frequented by Death Row. Snoop Dogg's acquittal party had been thrown at Monty's Steakhouse. Snoop and his bodyguard had been involved in an incident which had claimed the life of a 20-year-old called Philip Waldemariam. The evidence against Snoop, including shell casings, had been booked into the LAPD Pacific Division's evidence locker. Kevin Gaines had dominion over the locker, as it had been a division he worked at during the time. All the evidence in the locker against Snoop Dogg had turned up as missing, which led to Snoop being acquitted.
Attorney Johnny Cochran has said evidence in this trial is, quote, going to be a problem again. Part of that problem is the fact that the LAPD accidentally destroyed evidence against Snoop Doggy Dogg and the others.
The declassified FBI files on the Biggie case linked the missing evidence to Kevin Gaines. LAPD senior lead detective Kenneth Knox had identified Rafael Perez and David Mack as dressed in plain clothes while providing security as being at Can-Am Recording Studio in Tarzana, which was used by Death Row. Knox claimed it had been in early 1997, being after the Tupac incident, and while Suge Knight had been in prison. At least 4 officers, including the former captain of the Rampart Division, had witnessed the cops providing security for Death Row. The former LAPD Chief of Police Bernard Parks, in an interview with documentary filmmaker Nick Broomfield, claimed David Mack and Rafael Perez worked off-duty security for Death Row.
We know that David Mack and Rafael Perez both work security in this rap culture as it relates to some of these artists, but we've had
the Death
Row Records.
Mack and Perez were pictured with Bernard Park's daughter dressed in red suits with a cake which read Blood's Rule. People around Death Row, such as artist C-Style and Snoop Dogg's cousin Joe Cool, had identified Rafael Perez and David Mack as supplying security while carrying out interviews for the 2021 documentary Last Man Standing.
I've seen David Mack plenty of times.
Who was the other one? Rafael Perez.
Rafael Perez, seen him too.
Officer Perez, he was friends with Suge. I've seen him up there several times, and he was friends with Suge. I seen him in uniform and out of uniform.
Joe Cool had furthered these claims in a 2022 TV miniseries Who Killed Biggie and Tupac.
I saw Officer Perez and Officer Mack at Death Row Records several times. You making $50,000 a year, $45,000 a year, and Suge Knight throwing you a little extra, like double that? Man, you gonna be right. Hell yeah, I'll work for you.
Tupac's former manager Leela Steinberg, who had also trained David Mack in Fued before becoming a cop, had claimed in a Last Man Standing documentary that she had taken David Mack to a music video filming for artists Ray Love and Mac Moore, which Tupac had been directing, as David Mack wanted to get involved in the entertainment industry. She claimed to have then learned that he began providing off-duty security within the rap scene.
I knew David very well. He came with me to the video shoot when we were doing Mac Mall and Ray Love's video shoot. Tupac was directing and he wanted to be connected because he wanted to do off-duty work for rap artists.
When David Mack's home had been raided for the bank robbery, evidence had been found linking him to the Biggie case. The police had raided David Mack's home in relation to the bank robbery, where they had found a black SS Chevy Impala matching the description of the suspect's vehicle in his garage. Also in the garage, investigators had found what they described as a shrine to Tupac. Buried underneath David Mack's floorboards, they had found the same 9mm Gecko armor-piercing bullets used in Biggie's murder. The ammo is usually sold to police departments through military surplus sales. The ammo is metal-piercing and goes through body armor, meaning it wouldn't have mattered if Biggie had been wearing a bulletproof vest. FBI agent Phil Carson in the 2022 series Who Killed Biggie and Tupac had revealed that some of the 23 people who had traveled with Biggie and Puffy to the Peterson Automotive Museum were in police reports as identifying David Mack as being at the entrance of the venue when they were entering.
David Mack was identified
by witnesses who were part of Biggie's entourage saw David Mack at the entrance when they went inside with Biggie.
David Mack's former trainer Leela Steinberg, who was also Tupac's past manager, had been present at the Vibe party and confirmed in the 2021 documentary Last Man Standing that David Mack and the other officers had been present at the Vibe party.
Did you see David Mack and Perez at the event at the Peterson Motel?
They were all there.
Southside Compton Crip Dwayne Davis, who would also have been at the Vibe party, had confirmed in an interview with filmmaker RJ Bond that Rafael Perez and the other Rampart cops had been at the party. FBI agent Phil Carson in the Who Killed Biggie and Tupac series had claimed an LAPD log had showed Rafael Perez had been present on the crime scene, as he had been listed as a responding officer where he had been tampering with shell casings.
Rafael Perez was seen picking up shell casings and actually is on a log as an LAPD officer on site.
The declassified FBI files on a Biggie case claim that the surveillance footage being carried out on Biggie by the New York Special Case Squad may have the Rampart officers on tape being involved in the crime. The Chaos Merchants book, written by LAPD detective Russell Paul and co-author Michael Douglas Carlin, claimed that Perez had been found as using his credentials to book into the morgue following the hit in order to confirm the body was that of Biggie, making sure the hit was successful. Photos of Biggie within the morgue had also been captured, which were then later leaked in a 2001 PBS series Frontline, which was about the Rampart scandal's connection into the Biggie case. Kenneth Bogney would further make claims about the alleged tactics used by the cops. During the police raid on David Mack's home, tactical items had been found such as police scanners and radios. Russell Paul claimed that the cops were alleged to have used methods like intercepting police radios and using walkie-talkies to orchestrate the hit.
Why haven't these cases been solved? One reason that they were well orchestrated, well planned out, radios being used, communication, and had to be experienced police officers knew exactly what to do.
Police reports show a firearm had been discharged on the opposite side of the venue, which had occurred just prior to the hit, drawing the authorities away from the scene. Bogney had told journalist Don Sikorsky in a Dossier podcast that Perez had told him during the time Biggie was in LA, the cops were alleged to have gotten private investigator Anthony Pellicano to spy on Biggie in an alleged way to help orchestrate the hit.
Anthony Pellicano, that Perez and Mac use, that Suge and them use on a regular basis. He got all this information from them guys, how to find people and stuff like that, and they used them. Mrs. Wallace had the right to know that the LAPD played a part in killing her son.
Anthony Pellicano was an infamous private investigator and Hollywood fixer who had also become a convicted criminal, where it had been discovered that he had been tapping celebrities' phone calls illegally as part of his private investigation work. Bogney, in a prison interview for the miniseries Who Killed Biggie and Tupac, alleged Perez had told him that Perez's role in the hit had been to stalk Biggie at the party, where he would act as a spotter and give information to David Mack over a cell phone, detailing the whereabouts of Biggie and Puffy.
The night of the actual murder, David Mack told him to keep his eye on Notorious B.I.G. and Sean Puffy Combs. And when they got up or they made any type of move, he was to alert David Mack.
The FBI reports on the Biggie case claim that sources stated witnesses at the party had seen the cops using cell phones just prior to the hit taking place. Bogney had told journalist Don Sikorsky about the alleged failed double hit that was meant for Biggie and Puffy. He claimed Perez was alleged to have told him that Kevin Gaines had the job of intercepting the convoy, as more than one hitman was planned to come out and shoot both trucks to claim the bounty on both Biggie and Puffy.
Gaines was supposed to cut both of them off, the officer Gaines. A lot of people don't know that Gaines was seriously involved in this. He was supposed to cut both vehicles off, and the other guy come around and shoot him.
Gene Deal reported seeing a black sedan parked southbound on Fairfax. This car contained partygoers from Houston, Texas, who had partially captured the incident on tape. Parked directly behind the vehicle which was filming had been a white Toyota Land Cruiser, which was identified by Inglewood officer Reggie Blaylock, as well as Puffy's head of security Paul Buford. As the trucks began to take off, the white Toyota Land Cruiser had failed to intercept the convoy.
A white SUV pulls in front of the third SUV. momentarily cutting off security from Biggie's vehicle in front of them.
Gene Dill had forced Puffy's driver, the LAPD officer, to run a red light, with people theorizing the person in the black SS Chevy Impala was the hitman assigned to take out Puffy. When Biggie's truck had then stopped at the light, the white Toyota Land Cruiser had pulled up in the lane opposite it, boxing it in. The SS Chevy Impala, which Gene claimed to have been waiting on the corner, had then fired into the truck from the empty lane. The FBI documents claim that the cops were alleged to have used the same tactics in the Biggie case in a different crime, with the FBI files alleging that the cops had used the same tactics in another crime. Some speculate it to be the bank robbery, while others speculate it to be the Tupac incident. The FBI files go as far as claiming that the Tupac case had been framed for it to look like the Southside Compton Crips had done it in order to cover up for alleged cop involvement. There are two main motives in the cop theory, with one which includes Suge Knight and another which doesn't. Kenneth Bogney claims from what Rafael Perez had told him, he believed Suge Knight had been involved in the Biggie hit.
So are you saying that Suge Knight was behind the hit, though?
Absolutely. Absolutely. From the information that I got, he made the call to get it done.
He claimed the cops are alleged to have received the $250,000 through Death Row's lawyer David Kenner, as well as the head of security Reggie Wright Jr.
Suge was locked up. When Reggie Wright came to everybody and got the information from Dave Kenner about what they needed to be done.
Bogney claimed Suge had pulled out of the deal after the hit wasn't fully complete. Therefore, the cops didn't get the $750,000, resulting in Mac doing the bank robbery.
But they was also supposed to kill Sean Puffy Combs, and they didn't get it done. So Suge backed out of the deal. He was supposed to pay a certain amount of money, and he backed out. So that's why Mac did the bank job in order to pay Amir, because he was going to go after them. Because Suge didn't hire Amir, Perez, and Mac got him.
The theory argues that due to Tupac's murder being connected to the Southside Compton Crips in the media, which had then been tied into $1 million bounty by Puffy, Suge Knight had retaliated, through which Kenneth Bogney claimed in a 2017 TV documentary Who Shot Biggie and Tupac that Reggie Wright Jr. and David Kenner were alleged to have gotten the finances to the cops, with David Mack being told to find someone to do what the boss wanted done.
Right after Tupac was killed, word it came down that Mac was to find somebody to take care of what the boss wanted done.
David Mack was then alleged to have contracted Amir Muhammad for the hit. Suge Knight had been questioned on the murder of Biggie in the 2017 Fox TV documentary Who Shot Biggie and Tupac. He denied being involved in the murder, claiming he was in prison during the time.
We've heard consistently, Suge, that you're the person behind the hit on Biggie.
Well, they looked at y'all and told y'all a fat-ass lie. I was in jail, like I'm in jail now. Only thing I ever been guilty for is not turning it down. If somebody's trying to harm me, I'm going to protect myself. If somebody messes with one of my artists or one of my friends, I'm definitely going to have their back.
In a 2018 prison interview with Michael Douglas Carlin, Suge Knight claimed Orlando Anderson was not the shooter of Tupac, and claimed instead that Rafael Perez and his crew had been involved.
And the sad thing about it, Orlando wasn't even the shooter, you know? It's fantastic, that's not at all. Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too.
Suge Knight, in a 2025 prison interview with Piers Morgan, claimed it had been several crooked cops who had killed Tupac and Biggie.
Those same crooked cops, they cost Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls their life.
Suge, in a 2018 interview, had furthered his claims in tying the cops to his former head of security Reggie Wright Jr. as well as Sharifa Knight.
Because Perez and Reggie was good friends, and Perez and Sharita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot.
Reggie Wright Jr. was a former Compton cop who got the job to become Death Row Records' new head of security, replacing Mob James between 93 and 94. Reggie Wright Jr. was loaned $300,000 by Suge Knight in order to begin Rightway's protective services to supply Death Row with police security. No official documentation has ever connected the security service to the Rampart cops. Suge Knight was questioned on Rafael Perez and David Mack in a 2017 Fox series, where he had claimed not to have known the cops and stated it was Reggie Wright Jr. who knew them.
Tell me about David Mack.
I never had a conversation with none of those dudes.
Suge, those names be popping on the streets. You know about Rafael Perez, Mack, and them doing the whole setup thing.
They knew Reggie Wright. They didn't know me.
In the Piers Morgan interview, Suge Knight had also spoke on Reggie Wright Jr.'s actions of removing the guns from the bodyguards on the night of the shooting.
Reggie Wright Jr. told the security they can't carry firearms. Reggie Wright Jr. tell Michael Moore he can't carry his weapon when he's doing bodyguard work for Tupac.
He claimed the cars were intentionally boxed in as it was a contract hit with more than one shooter, with him previously naming Rafael Perez.
It was a murder for hire hit. It was blocked in. It was more than one shooter. Crooked cops destroyed hip-hop.
Nobody gonna ever believe it. It wasn't only a driver that killed Tupac. I was told by somebody who was there that somebody ran up on the car and shot Tupac. I told with a female, she said Suge Knight told her the same thing.
This ties back into the FBI documents claiming the same tactics used in the Biggie crime had been used in a different crime. Suge Knight spoke on bodyguard Michael Moore's claims of hearing the words "Gotham" come over one of the radios, being while he was with Reggie Wright Jr. during the time of the Tupac incident.
Reggie Wright Jr. and Michael Moore in the car. They get on the radio and they say, "Hey, got him." Another guy hits on the radio. They say they think he's a white guy or lawyer. And they said, "Hey, don't talk on the walkie-talkies on the radio. Don't talk on the air."
Michael Moore heard "got him." So clearly there were spotters. There were people who were telling everybody that was in on it what was happening, kind of a play-by-play over the radios.
After the Biggie hit had occurred while Suge Knight was in prison, Suge had then signed Death Row Records over to Reggie Wright Jr. Suge Knight in a Piers Morgan interview had spoken on Reggie Wright Jr.'s name being attached to the Biggie murder.
Reggie Wright Jr. gonna go to prison for Biggie's murder.
Reggie Wright Jr.'s house had been raided due to the Biggie case, but no evidence had been found linking him to the crime. FBI agent Phil Carson in the Who Killed Biggie and Tupac series displayed a document from the LAPD Internal Affairs Department, which concluded an internal investigation revealed Mack and Perez were alleged to have conspired in the murder of Biggie. The document revealed that the LAPD had been illegally adjudicated, referring being not permitted under the federal consent decree to be able to arrest the officers in relation to the Biggie case. The LAPD Internal Affairs Department had been notified in 2002 to have been restricted under federal law in being able to follow up with charges, being due to Rafael Perez's cooperation agreement in uncovering the Rampart scandal. The LAPD had then been forced into creating a cover-up. Biggie's family, based on evidence by Russell Paul, had then in the same year of 2002 had filed a civil suit against the LAPD in the city of LA, which had been for $500 million. Bogney was set to testify in a civil trial. However, the LAPD suppressed his testimony and had been fined $1.1 million. Stephen Katz, who is heading the Biggie investigation, was found to have been hiding information by locking it in his desk. The US government created a task force called Wrap It Up, which was to reinvestigate the Biggie case and had gone on to remove the police involvement. The task force was headed by former LAPD cop Greg Kading. Kading had then been removed from the task force after he was investigated in a separate case for allegations of bribing suspects to provide false testimony. He was the same detective under the task force which got the Tupac confession out of Dwayne Davis. Davis, who is now in court due to the claims, has stated he made them up under duress through the persuasion of Kading after the copper placed a 25-year prison sentence over his head. The task force had then investigated one of Suge Knight's kids' mothers, who they alleged had been involved in fraudulent activity. They had then held this over her head as part of the task force. They had investigated her financial records, which revealed she had been making transactions in increments to one of Suge Knight's Mob Piru associates called Poochie. The task force assumed the payments, which had totaled to $25K in increments, had been used to finance the Biggie hit. The task force then falsified a confession letter written from the perspective of the deceased Mob Piru member, with them going on to show it to Suge Knight's ex, while telling her she would go to prison and lose her kids if she didn't cooperate with it. She then agreed with the falsified confession written by the task force, in claiming that Poochie had killed Biggie. A judge found it was not enough evidence for legal action, but it served in providing a new suspect under the Biggie case, which had removed the LAPD involvement, and the $500 million lawsuit was dropped in 2010. In this video, we took a look into Lil Caesar's description of the Biggie suspect. Lil Caesar, in an interview with Vlad TV, had been asked if he believes it was Amir Muhammad or Poochie, but he had refused to comment on it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, smash the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and press that bell button so you can get all the future notifications for when I upload. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.